Hi, I'm Sean Yo, and welcome back to Forward Together. Thanks for listening. On this podcast, I'm reading the 2019 platform of the Green Party of Canada and sharing it as 9 easy-to-listen-to episodes. I hope this podcast makes learning about our platform simple and easy. Our platform is a clear vision for Canada and full of so many great ideas that I can't wait to share. Not everyone likes reading long documents, and not everyone can find the time to read something this long. That's why I'm doing this. We're also committed to being inclusive in how we share our platform, and we want to make our platform accessible to as many Canadians as possible. The idea of this podcast is to give you an audiobook of the Green Party platform, so you can learn what the Green Party is all about while you're on your way to work or out for a run, or whatever you love to do while you listen to podcasts. Now, to get the platform yourself, just go to greenparty.ca/platform. And to find out who your local Green Party candidate is, go to greenparty.ca/candidates and look it up by your postal code. However you're listening, welcome, and we'd love to hear from you. So you can email us at platformpodcast2019@gmail.com. If you have any platform questions or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. We'll read everything that you send us and do our best to reply as well. We're hoping to be able to share some of the questions and feedback as well. So if you'd prefer we don't share your comments, please mention that in your message. Okay, let's get started with episode 5. In this episode, we're going to cover the Greens' vision for transitioning to a green economy, Part 2, starting with food and food security. Food and food security. This section is labeled with 3 Sustainable Development Goals: Zero Hunger, Clean Water and Sanitation, Climate Action. Over the last 5 decades, agriculture has shifted from family-owned mixed farms to industrial production systems, crop monocultures and intensive livestock operations supported by inputs of chemical fertilizers, pesticides, pharmaceuticals, and genetically engineered seeds. Crops and livestock are produced for quantity and export, not quality and nutrition. It is this system that present and past governments have supported. As a result, transnational corporations now control most of our food supply, and agriculture has become a major cause of land degradation and pollution. Factory farms crowd chickens, turkeys, cows, and pigs into inhumane and unhygienic conditions, causing extreme weather and air pollution while creating the risk of food contamination and serious health risks. Estimates of the amount of food waste produced by this industrial system range from 30 to 50%, while the demand for food banks in wealthy countries grows, and global malnutrition remains stubbornly high. Farmers increasingly rely on off-farm income to survive. Globally, industrial agriculture contributes nearly a quarter of all climate-changing gases. In Canada, the figure is about 8%. Eroded and degraded soil requires heavy use of fertilizers, leading to fertilizer-fueled algal blooms, some deadly, choking lakes in coastal zones. Chemicals to control insects and weeds are killing pollinators, contaminating food, and endangering farm workers. Deforestation, land engineering, and irrigation to expand agriculture are driving unprecedented species extinctions. Shifting to mostly local, organic production systems for both crops and livestock will reduce climate-changing pollution while increasing the soil's ability to store carbon and retain productivity in the face of climate change. It will also reduce air pollution and algal blooms in waterways, protect pollinators and workers, increase food safety, and create humane conditions for farm animals. And it will restructure food markets to provide farm families with a fair share of the consumer food dollar. In June 2019, the Government of Canada released the first ever food policy for Canada. The Green Party supports most of these objectives and measures, as far as they go, although we remain concerned that it discourages consumption of Canadian milk products, a relatively inexpensive source of calcium and protein. We support the focus on increasing access to healthy food, including a national school lunch program, a Buy Canada program, increasing food security for northern communities, and reducing food waste. The policy says nothing, however, about the need to move away from industrial agriculture to address the serious environmental health and animal welfare problems this model of food production creates. A green government will green the Canada food policy. Establish climate change emission targets for all components of the food system, including nitrogen fertilizer use, livestock production, and transportation. Fund research and extend support for farmers shifting from conventional to organic and regenerative farming systems, which work with nature, not against it, to produce food. Adopt animal welfare legislation to prevent inhumane treatment of farm animals, including in intensive factory farming operations. This will set minimum standards of treatment and have a timetable for phasing out intensive factory farming and other inhumane animal husbandry practices. It will set standards for distances live animals can be transported and conditions for animals in slaughterhouses and auctions. Invest $2.5 million per year into a land and quota trust program and farming apprenticeship programs to expand local small-scale agriculture and help new farmers get started. Protect the right of farmers to save their own seed and promote heritage seed banks and seed exchange programs. Set a target to replace a third of Canada's food imports with domestic production, increasing regional food self-reliance and returning $15 billion food dollars back into our economy. Support rooftop and community gardens and urban food production systems to increase access to local food. Assist in reestablishing the infrastructure for local food productions in canneries, slaughterhouses, and other value-added food processes. Protect supply management systems while allowing production for local markets outside this system. Reinstate the Canada Land Inventory Program to provide a comprehensive record of existing and potential agricultural land. Provide effective fiscal incentives to other levels of government to preserve farmland under their jurisdictions. Renew the National Environmental Farm Plan Program to help farmers protect wildlife habitat areas and marginal lands, maintain water quality in streams, lakes, and aquifers, and retain and improve soil quality, increase carbon sequestration, and decrease water requirements. Restore the prairie farm rehabilitation measures for adaptation to drought conditions. Restructure Canada's business risk management programs to help farmers cope with climate risk, with a focus on disaster assistance. Food from the sea. This section is labeled with one Sustainable Development Goal, life below water. Seafood is an important part of a healthy diet and integral to the culture of coastal communities, especially Indigenous communities. Yet it is increasingly difficult to procure fish for a dinner that has come from a healthy stock fished by sustainable methods. Canadians should have access to seafood from sustainably managed fisheries caught, landed, and processed in Canada. As with agriculture, corporate industrial fisheries have inflicted great environmental damage, threatening the viability of the industry itself and undermining inshore fisheries. Many commercial fish populations are depleted, some near extinction, due to overfishing. Trawling gear has destroyed fish habitat, and trap and long lines create extreme entanglement hazards for whales, sea turtles, seabirds, and other species. Salmon aquaculture has undermined the viability of wild salmon populations, creating pollution problems and introducing toxic chemicals into coastal waters. Unlike agriculture, however, the fix is not straightforward. Despite the 27-year moratorium on cod fishing off Newfoundland, the commercial fishery remains closed. Now, Ocean acidification, increased water temperatures, and decreased oxygen levels associated with climate change are fundamentally altering marine ecosystems and threatening all fisheries, even those that are sustainably managed. Unless climate change is arrested, the ocean's ability to produce food for human populations may be permanently compromised. In the face of this threat, we must do everything possible to minimize the stress that we can control, giving the ocean its best chance to adapt to changing conditions. See Rescuing the Oceans. We must also ensure that coastal communities, historically dependent on marine harvesting for their livelihoods, are actively involved in fisheries management and derive the greatest possible benefit from those fisheries. While the Atlantic inshore fisheries has protections against corporate control, in British Columbia, fishing licenses and quotas can be owned by investors and fish processing companies. This means Canadian fish can be processed in other countries such as China. A green government would apply fair and consistent fishery policies to all fishers, whether in the Atlantic, Arctic, or the Pacific. Fully implement the co-management provisions of the Oceans Act. Protect independent harvesters and coastal communities by entrenching owner-operator and fleet separation policies in the Fisheries Act, and implement the 20 recommendations of the Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans Report, West Coast Fisheries, Sharing Risks and Benefits. Increase funding for research on fish stocks to improve management and protect endangered species in the face of rapidly changing ecosystems. By 2025, move all open net pen finfish aquaculture facilities into closed containment systems on land. As with land farmers transitioning from conventional production, provide financial and extension support to fish pen workers to make this transition. Remove Fisheries and Oceans Canada's mandate to promote salmon aquaculture and shift regulation of aquaculture to Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, thereby eliminating DFO's conflicting roles of aquaculture promotion and wild salmon protection. Redirecting federal natural resources priorities. This section is labeled with 2 sustainable development goals: climate action and life on land. A few decades ago, Natural Resources Canada, NRCan, was called the Department of Energy's Mines and Resources. It conducted robust analysis of those sectors and substantial research and policy innovation in forestry. Under Stephen Harper, the Canadian Forest Service, CFS, was devastated. The Pacific Forest Research Centre was closed, and budgets of other CFS science centres were cut. Programs like Model Forests and Annual State of the Forest reports were cancelled. Changes to legislation and policy priorities were crafted to fast-track pipeline approvals. The level of scrutiny of the mining industry and research and policy attention to alternative energy sources shrank. Today, NRCan is little more than the Department of Oil and Gas. Rather than taking the lead on a national energy strategy that will get us to a carbon-free energy system by 2050, departmental resources are concentrated on expanding the very sectors that must be phased out. A green government will redeploy the financial, physical, and intellectual resources of NRCan towards achieving the goals of Mission Possible. Collaborate with provinces, territories, Indigenous peoples, and the public to develop a pan-Canadian energy strategy that gets us to a carbon-free energy system by 2050. Phases out bitumen production for fuels by 2030 to 35. Prioritizes Canadian jobs and supply. Reduces energy demand across all sectors by 50%, and ensures energy security for Canadians throughout this transition. Support the transition of the mining sector to an innovation hub for greener technologies, commercialized and attractive to export markets, including $40 million for the proposed Sudbury-based mining innovation cluster. Collaborate with provinces, territories, Indigenous peoples, and the public to renew the abandoned process of developing a national forest strategy, which recognizes the role of forests in carbon sequestration and the imperative of retaining and restoring the ecological integrity of forest ecosystems in building resilience in the face of climate change. Increased funds would be dedicated to research the expansion of tree nurseries in support of these objectives. Science and innovation. The Harper government muzzled scientists and cut funding for key research, including funding for clean water and northern science on climate change. The current Liberal government has talked about funding science and climate change research, but has fallen well short of what is needed. Scientific research is the foundation of innovation, and enabling a green future requires switching to an innovation economy. A green government will make Canada a leader in this space. Invest in scientific research and implement the full funding recommendations from Canada's Fundamental Science Review. Enhance funding for the granting councils, including the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council, NSERC, the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, SSHRC, and the Canadian Institute for Health Research. Restore and augment climate change and atmospheric research, CCAR, funding to NSERC, and ensure ongoing funding for the Polar Environment Atmospheric Research Laboratory, which the Liberals failed to restore after the funding ran out. Commit to full implementation of scientific integrity policies for all government departments. Establish a portal where all government science, including the evidence the government uses to make decisions, is available to Canadians in a comprehensible form. Adopt policies similar to Europe's Plan S to ensure that scientific publications based on publicly funded research are available in open access journals or on the portal. Support NSERC's framework on equity, diversity, and inclusion in scientific research and commit to strengthening Canadian scientific and engineering communities to include the full participation of equity-seeking groups, including women, visible minorities, Indigenous peoples, people with diverse gender identities, and people with disabilities. Arts, culture, and media in a green economy. Few sectors have such a small ecological footprint but deliver such multifaceted benefits to communities and our national identity as the arts and culture. A green government will ensure that they are integral to the green economy. Increase funding to all of Canada's arts and culture organizations, including the Canada Council for the Arts, the National Film Board, and Telefilm Canada. Review tax incentives for film production to ensure all parts of Canada are competitive and attractive to the industry, with incentives rising when Canadian artistic and technical talent are employed. Implement a federal income tax credit for restoration expenditures to encourage private involvement in preserving Canada's built heritage. Establish charitable tax credits for the private donation of easements on heritage properties to charitable organizations or local governments. A vibrant, diverse media sector is a prerequisite for a healthy democracy. Traditional media are withering and disappearing from small markets due to a combination of digital and online competition and corporate concentration of ownership. A green government will reform antitrust laws to enable the breakup of media conglomerates, close the loophole that exempts social media platforms from collecting taxes on advertising, and ensure all government advertising is placed in Canadian publications. Increase funding to CBC and Radio-Canada by $315 million per year until the per capita level of funding is equal to that of the BBC. Reform the governance structure of CBC/Radio-Canada to remove the potential for political interference in board appointments. Cannabis. A year into the legalization of cannabis, the flaws in the regulatory framework for cannabis production and sale are evident, and a reform agenda is emerging. Although one of the goals of legalization was to undermine the black market, since October 2018, the percentage of Canadians obtaining cannabis from illegal sources has not dropped below 38%. Contributing to this is an approach to legalization that treats the production of cannabis as uniquely dangerous. Security requirements mean growers must use more energy and water and deal with disease and pests that thrive in greenhouses, increasing costs and hobbling their ability to meet production expectations. CBD, used medicinally to reduce pain and anxiety, is not available to many who have prescriptions, increasing the illegal market for cannabis. A green government will lower the federally set price for cannabis to make it competitive with illegal supplies. Eliminate requirements for excess plastic packaging on legal cannabis. Remove the sales tax on medicinal products. Allow outdoor production and impose organic production standards. Exempt CBD from the restrictions of the prescriptions list, allowing hemp growers to produce it as a natural health product. This would strengthen the hemp industry and increase supply so those who use it for medicinal purposes do not have to purchase it illegally. Managing technological change. This section is labeled with 3 Sustainable Development Goals: no poverty, decent work and economic growth, and peace, justice, and strong institutions. Closing the digital divide. To a great extent, the green economy is a digital economy. To participate fully, individuals and communities across the country need access to reliable, affordable, high-speed internet. Such infrastructure is as essential today as power and telephone lines were in early last century. Currently, there is a digital divide separating those with such access and those without. The Green Party supports the government's connectivity strategy, but has concerns about the introduction of 5G technology in which companies should be involved in delivering this next generation of connectivity. We are also concerned that regulatory structures governing cellular and internet services result in Canadians paying much higher fees than people in other countries. A Green government will strike a parliamentary committee to examine the implication of introducing 5G technology, including security issues and impacts on weather forecasting, and make recommendations on how and if Canada should proceed. Guard against threats to net neutrality. Artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, AI, and other emerging technology have the potential to do a lot of good for our society and environment, but regulation is needed to ensure that these advances benefit everyone. A green government will make Canada the global leader in AI development and regulation. We must plan for the fact that AI and automation are putting many Canadians out of work. Our regulations will spell out ethics and safety-centered legal criteria, as well as detailing significant issues relating to law, liability, research and innovation, environmental impacts, intellectual property rights, the flow of data, privacy, safety and security, and public education. Strike a parliamentary committee to examine the range of issues related to the development of AI. Recommendations would form the basis of a legislative and regulatory framework to govern the ethical, environmental, social, and economic implications of widespread dispersions of AI technology. Bring in a guaranteed livable income to reduce anxiety as the world of work is disrupted in ways we cannot predict. Eliminate tuition to increase education and trade-level skills to adapt to change. Institute a tax for large corporations that is equivalent to the income tax paid by employees who have been laid off due to AI. Small businesses will be exempt. Use this tax revenue to fund educational and transition programs for laid-off workers, including trade schools. Track automation in different sectors and non-automatable jobs. Fund job creation, emphasizing a secure future in meaningful work. Ban autonomous weapons and fight for a global pact to make them illegal. Consumer protection. Consumerism is the centerpiece of the gray economy. GDP growth depends on ever-expanding mass consumption, which in turn drives increased extraction of raw materials, manufacture of largely disposable consumer goods, and production of massive volumes of waste at every point in the commodity chain. This linear consumption-production waste system, the driver of global warming, depends on disposability, a throwaway culture. It also depends on easy credit, which in turn enriches the financial sector and undermines individual and family financial stability. A green economy is built on durability. Products are built to last and to be repaired. It also protects citizens from the predatory business practices of credit card and telecom corporations and banks. Setting product and service standards for consumer protection are well within the purview of government. A green government will drop the hands-off approach. It's time to intervene. Enact right-to-repair legislation that requires producers to provide consumers or repair shops with replacement parts, software, and tools for diagnosing, maintaining, or repairing their products for a fair price, and to reset any electronic security that may disable the device during diagnosis, maintenance, or repair. Limit credit card interest rates to a maximum of 10 percentage points above the Bank of Canada prime rate. Limit ATM fees to $1 per transaction and prohibit financial institutions from charging their own customers ATM fees. Amend CRTC regulations to increase competition in the provision of cellular and internet services to consumers and decouple payments for cell phones from cell services. Enact provisions to protect consumers and investors from fraud and theft in the cryptocurrency spheres, and direct Revenue Canada and law enforcement agencies to develop practical methods for preventing the use of cryptocurrencies for money laundering and funding terrorism. And that's it for this episode. We went over the Green Party vision for addressing the climate emergency, Part 2. Now, to get that platform yourself, you can go to greenparty.ca/platform. And to look up who your local Green Party candidate is, go to greenparty.ca/candidates, and you can look it up by your postal code. Thank you so much for your time. Once again, we'd love to hear from you, so you can email us at platformpodcast2019@gmail.com. If you have any platform questions or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. We'll read everything that you send us and do our best to reply as well. We're hoping to be able to share some of these questions and feedback as well. So if you'd prefer we don't share your comments, just mention that in your message. Coming up next is episode 6, where we'll cover Invoking Ecological Wisdom. I'm Sean Yo, and thanks so much for joining us. See you next episode.